You held a certain fascination when you were beautiful, delicate, and untouched. But now you're like one of the Arabians my father used to own. Rode hard and put away wet.
Chuck Bass, while being many people's favorite Gossip Girl character, to me was actually a supervillain and emotional manipulator among many other terrible things. I don't want to get heated about this, but I probably will. Today we're going to talk about everything Chuck did to solidify his position as my least favorite character on Gossip Girl. Part 1. We are first introduced to Chuck in the pilot episode at Eleanor's party, where he's evilly smirking in the corner as Blair is clearly a little flustered by Serena's return. We later find out that Chuck is smirking because he knows that Serena and Nate slept together. In fact, he watched the whole thing, because that's normal. So seeing the awkwardness between Blair and Serena now is especially enjoyable for him. Now we really start to see Chuck for the supervillain he is almost immediately when Serena gets drunk after her talk with Blair and he tries to grape her as payment for a truffle grilled cheese sandwich, and kind of blackmail as well, because this is where he lets her know that he saw everything. And to his disappointment, Serena isn't interested. In fact, she adamantly fights him off and he keeps trying. You know, I'll never understand people who get pushed away and still try to plant their slimy lips and filthy hands on other people. Like, do you not feel absolutely disgusting? What's even sadder is that other than the viewer, no one really ever finds out about what he did to Serena in that kitchen. And it appears that Serena forgives him not too long after. The closest she ever gets to exposing him is by telling Dan if it's Chuck, it's not okay, when he receives an SOS from Jenny.
I'm sorry, I have to go.
I'll go with you.
No, really, that's okay.
No, listen, if it's Chuck, it's not okay.
So I guess you can say the blackmail partially worked. The pilot goes all out in solidifying Chuck as a horrible, horrible person, because at the Kiss on the Lips party, he does the same thing to Jenny Humphrey. Can we talk about how Blair's minions are not only raging bitches, but also certified misogynists? Kind of like her. I'm gonna talk about that in another video. For the way that they sit there and talk about Jenny like she's a piece of meat with Chuck, and are almost encouraging, well, not almost, they are definitely encouraging him to take advantage of her.
Who's the newbie?
Jenny Humphrey, she's the freshman.
I love freshmen. So,
Fresh?
anything about our Gossip Girl?
No? Until you're done with her. Until you're done with her.
Hi, I'm Chuck.
It's nasty and it's weird, but it happens. Though luckily, Dan shows up to save Jenny from this insane situation. Is it just me who wonders what would have happened if Dan and Serena never showed up? Like, he was clearly up there going all in, taking advantage of her. Would Jenny's peers have believed her? I know that Chuck, being the richest character on the show, played a role in the way he suffered no real consequences for the assaults of these two girls, all within what, like 24 hours? I can't help but believe that if Dan had assaulted two women in one night, there would be serious repercussions for his behavior. Not only does it appear that Chuck is feared, he's also in a weird way protected by the people around him, even the young girls he is most dangerous to. Rufus doesn't find out about the situation till later on, and Jenny actually loses her virginity to the same Chuck who assaulted her in the pilot. Keep in mind, Rufus does try to hold a grudge against Chuck for what he did to Jenny that night that he was supposed to propose to Blair, but even Jenny ends up telling Rufus that it wasn't really Chuck's fault. But are we forgetting that Chuck has tried to grape you in the past? So it's like, it might not be his fault in this situation, but he's just not an innocent party at all, and it's constantly being shown as if he is, and I can't stand it. As the show continues, Chuck consistently displays his a-hole tendencies by using women, bullying his peers, and saying this ridiculous catchphrase.
I'm Chuck Bass.
Even when it looks like change is right around the corner for Chuck, it appears any little bruise to his ego draws him right back into his old ways. We see this repeatedly in his relationship with Blair. Though he has feelings for her and went out of his way to ruin her relationship with his best friend Nate, when she comes to him, he degrades her, and this is in season 1, episode 13. He compares her to a horse, guys, an Arabian horse.
You held a certain fascination when you were beautiful, delicate, and untouched. But now you're like One of the Arabians my father used to own. Rode hard and put away wet.
And this pattern of him degrading Blair after she either sacrifices her reputation or loses her pride carries on throughout the series. And Blair isn't by any means innocent. She will have her day, trust me. But this video is about Chuck, so let's try to stay on topic here. The crazy thing to me about season 1 Chuck is that he literally cared about absolutely no one. Actually, I think that was for about 2 to 3 seasons. He did not give a fuck about anyone. When he sends out that Gossip Girl blast to expose Blair for sleeping with him and Nate, he isn't concerned about his relationship with Blair, his relationship with Nate, their relationship with each other. He just wants to embarrass Blair for rejecting him. And let me just say, after what Nate did to Serena, you'd think he'd be a little less self-righteous, but I digress. Actually, I don't digress. The fuck? I know Chuck and Blair were definitely wrong, but let's never forget how Nate and Serena slept together and then hid it for like a year straight, while him and Blair were in a practically lifelong relationship. Let's also never forget that Nate didn't want Blair and only got back with her for the sake of business with Eleanor. So he was using her as well. I want us to never forget that. I'm tired of the Nate is innocent claims. He's never been innocent. Back to Chuck though. Season 1 Chuck is on a different level of narcissism, the way he ruthlessly hurts people and just moves on with his life. I kind of want to reiterate here that Chuck has feelings for Blair, no matter how horribly he displays them. And he even tries to explain this to Nate after he finds out that they slept together. But when he speaks to Blair, you would think the opposite. This is a recurring theme throughout the show. For example, when Chuck can't tell Blair he loves her but finds a way to tell several other people. His emotions toward her seem to be available only when he's not talking to her. And in the very last episode of season 1, he completely leaves her hanging as they're about to fly out together so that he can sleep with someone else. Another example of his immaturity and inability to face his feelings because he sees vulnerability as something weak and negative. And I get how Chuck fans explain a lot of his problematic behavior has to do with his upbringing, and I'm not dismissing that at all. But I also think we need to be careful with excusing behavior due to the circumstances surrounding it. Most of us are able to acknowledge that he hasn't had an easy upbringing, and some of us actively use this as an excuse. And it's quite pathetic, especially when we know that there are people who've experienced similar things to Chuck, maybe arguably even worse, and would never think to grape someone. Yet you will find people in Reddit forums who barely acknowledge how completely unacceptable majority of Chuck's behavior is. And he betrays Blair in many ways moving forward, like trading her for his beloved hotel, using the fact that she would do anything for him against her. They go through this roller coaster of a relationship until he gives her the ultimatum to show up at the Empire State Building at a certain time, and if she doesn't, he will walk away forever. When Blair is 2 minutes late, because Dorota's giving birth, mind you, he leaves and sleeps with Jenny Humphrey. And I don't want to hear any Jenny Humphrey bashing in the comments. Yeah, she has her issues, but she's clearly a victim in a lot of these situations, yet she gets dragged to no end. Making somebody seem unworthy of an abuser and a rapist's love, the way that Blair makes it seem as if Jenny doesn't deserve to be touched by Chuck, as if Chuck is some sort of prize, is honestly so sickening and misogynistic. Oh my god, I'm gonna go off. But this isn't about Blair, so let me just stop. Anyway, it's important to note that Chuck planned on proposing to Blair that day, but still couldn't wait more than a couple minutes for someone he sees as a future wife. Chuck proves time and time again that he has no impulse control in the way he displays his anger, even at one point breaking glass and hurting Blair in the process. And this lack of impulse control makes him an easy target for anyone looking to use his reactions against him. Now, one of the prime examples of this was his uncle. We saw that happen a little bit prior to this. And then another example of this was his therapist, who was working with Louis to get him to lose his temper. I will say, as Blair and Louis get closer to marriage, there's a lot of growth for Chuck's character, like the way he refuses to join forces with the priest to ruin the wedding. However, he does try to sabotage Dan's book proposal by sending a plagiarized proposal, deleting Dan's from his computer, and then distracting his agent from actually reading it. So he's still got a touch of the petty in him. Don't worry though, he eventually sends the right proposal because, you know, growth. Now, I know I'm talking about a lot of horrible things Chuck Bass has done, But he still found a way, as most problematic characters do, to win the hearts of many Gossip Girl fans. Of course, he's loved for different reasons. Some people love the way Ed Westwick plays the character. Some think Chuck is layered and experiences the most growth. Some love how entertaining his relationship is with Blair. And this, I could pretty much all agree with. I think a lot of us hate to even hear someone saying that they like Chuck for whatever reason it may be, because we always assume that it's for all the wrong reasons. But I do think some fans make a good point of saying that they aren't idolizing the character for their awful actions, but rather they enjoy the character for the entertainment that emerges from their awful actions. It's like enjoying a horror movie for the entertainment that stems from the perceived fear, knowing it's not real and condoning nothing at all that happens. However, with every problematic character, there's a select few, or maybe even more than a few, who get immersed in the performance. They grow a real appreciation for the character, and the lines between reality and fiction become blurred. When we see people making excuses for Chuck's behavior, fictional as it may be, it becomes worrying to say the least. Especially seeing these patterns exist in real life situations. If you idolize Chuck and Blair's relationship, like in a real sense, in many ways, you might be idolizing emotional abuse and toxicity. You might find this example a bit extreme, but serial killers are fawned over by people who find them attractive, they're given attention, they're even sometimes proposed to. Take Ted Bundy, for example. And this is not to say that anyone is undeserving of love, that's not up to me to determine. But completely glossing over someone's problematic behavior isn't a form of love either. Of course, class, race, and social perception play a huge role in the way Chuck and characters like Joe Goldberg and Dexter are perceived. Now, I see y'all fawning over Joe Goldberg and Dexter. Don't think I don't see y'all. I know Chuck didn't kill anyone, but his actions are still inexcusable. Maybe the problem is that the majority of us watched the show before our frontal lobe developed. To bring up a character's past or to talk about how attractive you find them in order to deflect from the horrible things that they did only normalizes behavior like this. And I can't help but to think this mindset can trickle down into the real world. As annoying as I find Dan, whenever he pissed everyone off, he was almost immediately exiled, whereas Chuck got the benefit of the doubt repeatedly, chance after chance. Maybe it's because he's the richest kid on the show, and this translated to the way the audience perceived Chuck as the repentant bad boy who just can't help that he's troubled but is really trying to change for the better. I just don't think Dan would have been given the same grace, as much as I can't fucking stand him. And I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that Chuck had money, power, and mommy daddy issues. Oh, and that people think he's hot. Anyway, I would love to know what you guys think about this. Please leave me a comment down below and like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you feel like it. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, guys. I'm sorry the past few days I've been missing because I've been feeling like absolute shit. I don't know if I had too much fun over the holidays, but I came down with a cold and oh, I know it makes me sound sexy though, but damn. I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching and goodbye. Happy New Year! Happy New Year!